I want to tell you guys about the time I had a polygraph. For those of you that don't know, I used to be a law enforcement officer, which, side note, is probably why understanding the laws of God came so naturally to me when I started studying them. But that's neither here nor there. So, in order to be a law enforcement officer, I had to take a polygraph test. And I've lived a checkered life. Nothing too bad, especially not in my own eyes. I would have never said I did anything that bad. I partied. I slept around with people. I did all kinds of stuff that, as a true Bible-believing Christian, we should not go near whatsoever. But in my eyes at the time, nothing I had done was that bad. But I had to get a polygraph, right? And I had decided when I went in there, I was just going to tell the truth about everything. I would rather not get the job for being honest and them not liking what I did than not get the job because they found out I lied to them about something that I did actually do. So I had decided, no matter what, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to tell them the truth, and I'm going to let the cards fall where they do. I'm going to accept whatever decision's made. So I go in there, and they ask me everything. I mean, I was not prepared for the kinds of questions that they were going to ask me. Everything. Drug use, sleeping around, cheating on people, gambling. I mean, literally anything you could think of that's some kind of deplorable activity in our society, they asked me in detail what I've ever done. And when I left that room, I felt like the biggest piece of crap ever. I felt like the most terrible person that ever lived. And when I walked in there, I didn't think that anything I had done in my previous life was that bad, right? But to their standards, what I had done in my life was horrible, or at least it looked horrible, right? So to my standards, it wasn't that bad. To their standards, it was bad. So I went in there, I told them everything, I left, and I'm like, there's no way I'm ever going to get the job after all of this came out. I mean, there's no way, right? And for those of you wondering, I did end up getting the job, but still, the polygraph sucked. I mean, it was definitely up there when it comes to terms of crappiest days that I've had to live out in my adult life. And I was thinking about this last night. I don't know why, it just popped into my head. Maybe the Father wanted me to share this story about it. But think about Judgment Day. Think about how bad Judgment Day is going to be. I mean, if getting a polygraph is that bad, Judgment Day is going to be like... In the book of Amos, it tells us that we should not desire the day of the Lord or Judgment Day because it's going to be darkness and not light. In Isaiah 66, it says that on the day of the Lord, many will be slain. I mean, that implies more people than not. And in Matthew 13, it says that all the ungodly and all the sinners are going to be rounded up and cast into the fiery furnace. I mean, just think about these things that are going to happen on Judgment Day. And Jesus told us in Matthew 12, I believe, could be Matthew 10, one of those, he told us that we will be, it's Matthew 12, definitely Matthew 12. He told us that we will have to make an account for every idle word that we spoke. Every idle word that we spoke, we're going to have to make an account of, right? And just going through some of the semi-checkered stuff that I thought was bad in my polygraph is going to make that look like just a walk in the park, like a happy picnic day. I mean, I can't even imagine recounting every idle word I've ever spoken in front of God and Jesus and whoever else, the whole world, all the people that have ever lived. I don't know. But I can't imagine recounting every idle word I've spoken before all of those people and not feeling like just a giant pile of crap. I mean, the polygraph already showed me that clearly my standards of what is acceptable is not. So, I mean, it's just horrible thinking about this day. And 1 Peter 4 tells us that judgment starts with the house of God. It starts with us. All these Christians think that they're going to go through and not be judged. They're going to just get a free pass through the pearly gates, not have to go through judgment because Yeshua is going to stand in our place Not true. Jesus is the one that tells us we're going to have to make an account of every idle word. And in 1 Peter 4, it says that the righteous, the people obedient to God, are going to be scarcely saved. So, I mean, it's just such a false idea people have about what Judgment Day is going to entail. It's going to be horrible, right? And Christians can't even give up the most simple thing that God asked us to do. They can't even give up bacon or their Saturday plans or giving up the man-made traditions and holidays of the world, like Christmas and Easter. They have nothing to do with Christ. And you know what? Let me take a sidebar here real quick and go off on a little tangent about that. First of all, every Christian is like, no, of course we can't live in sin. Of course, as believers, we can't live in sin. But, if we do, Jesus paid for it. So there's that. I mean, you got the once saved, always saved Christians, which is not even close to biblical. I'm not even going to get started on that one. Then you have all the other Christians. I mean, not all Christians, but a vast majority of them can't even acknowledge what sin is or that they are still partaking in it because they were never taught what sin is or how God views it or how to walk out his laws. They were never, ever taught. Their church doesn't even know. Let me give you an example of this. I brought up Christmas and Easter. The first commandment, have no other gods before me, right? Most Christians still think that the 10 Commandments apply, even though none of them keep the Sabbath. Again, neither here nor there for this particular video. But just using the first commandment for an example. Have no gods before me, right? Every Christian's like, of course I don't have any other gods before him. But you don't actually understand or were taught or look into the laws that God defines how to not have any other gods before him. It's not just, oh, God's my only God and none of these other ones are. No. How you live your life, your actions, your words, what you do can make you have other gods before him without you actually acknowledging that you're worshiping another God. So, for instance, again, Christmas and Easter, in Deuteronomy 12, God says that you cannot rebrand pagan holidays or pagan customs in my honor. It's an abomination to me. I hate that, right? So God says if you celebrate Christmas or Easter, which are undeniably rebranded pagan holidays, in his honor, you're having another god before him. You might as well be worshiping that other god who it was originally about. Like Easter was about Queen Ishtar, and Christmas was about Nimrod, right? You can look into Yule. I mean, you don't have to believe me, but it's the truth, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. So you have all these sins that Christians are partaking in, and they have no idea that they're actually partaking in sin because they've never taken the time or were taught how God defines sin or how he defines not to do this or how to do this. So all these things Christians are doing that are breaking really, really big, really bad laws that God told us if we break, we're going to get cast into hell for. And they're like, no, we can't sin. Of course we're not sinning, right? And then you bring up the simplest change, the smallest change, right? Following God's dietary laws. He clearly told us not to eat pork, shrimp, lobster, crab, any of that. And you guys can't even give up the small stuff for him, let alone the big stuff like giving up pagan holidays or keeping the Sabbath. So, I mean, it's just terrible. I see these things and I want to help all these people, but most of you won't listen to me or acknowledge that what I'm telling you is actually biblical, even though I can support it with scripture. Especially the dietary laws. Don't even get me started on that. Mark 7, Matthew 15, Acts 10 do not mean what you think they do. But again, this isn't about the dietary laws. I really want you guys to do some research on Judgment Day. I know none of us really like thinking about Judgment Day, but we are 100% going to go through it. And we as believers are going to go through it first. And we as believers are going to have to make an account for every single idle word and every single idle action we've ever spoken or done. And I can tell you, again, from just my polygraph experience, it's going to be bad, really bad. And if you can limit that right now by doing what Jesus did, walking in his footsteps, I just suggest that you do that. Because I don't want to heap sins on top of my sins. I want to do my best to limit those, right? So that I'm not putting Yeshua to open shame. So I'm not abusing the spirit of grace. I hope you guys take this advice.